I think that the best and first place to start is just a quick sample survey. You're familiar with prosperity gospel. That's
Yeah.
of course you are, and that premise is that if you worship God and give your money to the church, that you will be blessed with riches and a happy life, and if you don't, then you will be plagued with misery and poverty. So just as a quick test of that idea, how are you?
Our guest this week is Aron Ra. It's a fascinating discussion. You're really going to like it. I'm going to try and get out of your hair as quick as I possibly can. But look, here's some other stuff that I've got available to you, the peoples, who might want to, see some other stuff that's going on. So I got this. If you haven't read this, that's kind of related to what we're talking about. This is completely unrelated to what any of us are talking about, but it's super fun, and I think there's a lot of I did some pretty good work in that one. This, if you like short little limericky things with pretty pictures, these are great for that. And this is a coloring book that I did too. And if you do this QR code thing right here, you'll just you can go get any of those you want, and all of them help me out. So if you like stuff like the interview you're about to see, uh, go and picking up, some of these. Pretty good way to do that. Thank you. I hope you enjoy this. Bye.
All right. I mean, what you're describing with the prosperity gospel is so obviously a scam. I mean, just
Mm-hmm.
across the board. How do people, I'm trying to imagine being so financially desperate, and I've been financially desperate, but so desperate as to believe that if I give the last money I have, that somehow I'm going to be rich for it.
To somebody who
I could
already
I could see
has
that.
huge properties and
Yeah,
really
somebody who
nice
clearly
cars and
doesn't.
private jets.
And the common joke, from Star Trek, why would God need a starship? Why would God need my dollar?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that God always needs money? Well, of course, it's not God, is it?
Never is. No, no.
I know people who have wiped themselves out financially, where they pay too much in tithe. When they go way over the 10%, and it's not even net, they do 10% of gross, and they go way over that because when they get desperate, when things are crunching in, they pay more money to pay for blessings.
Mm-hmm. And that would maybe in a small rural community where the church is providing all your social safety net services, there may be something to giving to that organization when you can and taking when you need, but it doesn't seem to be the way prosperity gospel operates. It's always more, more, more to the church. uh it's almost
Uh,
like the preacher sets themselves up as the person they're living vicariously through. Like, you're experiencing all this wealth and joy through me, and I come and tell you about it on Sunday afternoon.
Creflo Dollar, and what family name has Dollar, right? I mean, it's just so obvious. I mean, when he's bragging to the audience that's giving him their money so that they can become rich, that's the belief. They will give him money and they'll become rich. How fucking stupid do you have to be? He's he's going around while he's collecting, hundreds of dollars from each person. He's bragging, I am a blessed man. I got my own airplane. Really? Yeah, and he's talking about a citation jet. So I mean, not like a Cessna. We're not. I realize a Cessna is a citation, but we're not talking about like a Cessna 150. We're talking about the citation jet, the big boy. So it amazes me that people can be that credulous, that emotionally invested, that desperate. But I guess when people buy into religious extremism and conspiracy theories and everything, I've noticed that it's people who don't appear to understand much of anything anyway. You know, and maybe that's why they are that way. I mean, it's at some point they recognize nothing makes sense to them because they don't understand it. Therefore, they want to imagine that they are part of the elite. They're one of the few with the untold truth, the secret knowledge.
Yeah. Well, it seems like
Empowers them.
there's plenty of like, marketing data on customer retention that goes into it too, where you like, I mean, it seems like a lot of the people, they'll be in a bad situation and they'll see the TV show and they'll think of, oh, I'll send off $2 like they're buying a lottery ticket. The same kind of, well, it's $2, let's hope. But then that recurrent customer retention marketing kicks in where they keep getting mailers and they keep getting barraged with this. You need to give just a little bit more kind of marketing. And that seems to be what drags them in until it becomes a sunk cost fallacy. No?
Now, I live in Dallas, which has a few notable things. I've lived here mostly since the 1990s, or since 1990. I have lived in the Dallas area most of my time. And what we had when we moved here was Kenneth and Gloria Copeland. And Kenneth Copeland, if you've ever seen him, he looks as predatory as possible. He has the eyes of a lion, which a little bit scary. They're kind of yellow and ringed and black, and he really does look like a fucking predator. Just the way he talks reminds me of a predator. He has zero comprehension of any fucking thing. But he has a $20 million mansion and two Cessna Citation jets.
Now, does he or does the church?
Yeah. And so he's supposed to be the richest of all of the televangelists, all the prosperity gospel people. He's the richest. He claims $1 billion, but other sources say it's 750 million. Still, hands down, richer than everybody else, right? Mm-hmm. Richer than all these other prosperity gospel people. And it's stunning to me how he and Gloria Copeland were going around doing things like, curing cancer through faith healing. And these believers, they want to believe so desperately that every time he gets a prophecy wrong, they ignore it. And Gloria Copeland was over there curing cancer with faith healing until I'm pretty sure she died of cancer.
Well, that she irony.
She couldn't cure, right? And then also here in Dallas, we had back 1990, 91, thereabouts. I remember it was a big deal. Reverend Bobby Tilton. And Bobby Tilton was an amusingly arrogant, obvious fucking liar. And he was sampled on a number of music videos. I remember Motorhead sampled Bobby Tilton on their song Bad Religion. Where Bobby Tilton says, "I'm talking about your money." And my favorite quote when I was watching, I would hate watch Bobby Tilton, just stunned at the stupidity that would come out of his mouth that people buy into. And they would send him millions. He's making millions of dollars every year, and he has no idea what these letters that people are sending him, that he's pretending he's going to pray over them as if that means a fucking thing. Does God not already know everything? Does God know what you're praying about and whether you're going to pray about? Does God not already know how he's going to answer that prayer? Why does Bobby Tilton have to get in there at all?
Well, it's like everything else, and they need the slush file reader.
Here's my favorite quote from Reverend Robert Tilton. Let's say you want to worship Jesus with $500. Let's say you want to worship Jesus with $1,000. All I'm asking is a vow of faith. Worship Jesus with $500. Worship Jesus with $1,000. Yeah. The more money you give me, the more Jesus likes you. How the fuck is that guy not in prison?
I mean, you got to admire the showmanship, though. Such presentation.
Yeah. Well, he made the claim that we've seen midgets grow, among other things. There's all kinds of you can't verify anything he says. I mean, we have footage of one guy that went into his church, had a broken clavicle, And rather than go to the emergency room, he had an opportunity he could go to Bobby Tilton instead. And he got up on stage. It's on video. Bobby Tilton grabs his clavicle, says something stupid, punches at him. And so and then rotate your arm. And he goes, oh, because he's trying to believe that it's fixed. Of course, he's not. It's not. He ends up, he has to go to the hospital after that. And some
because
people,
he probably exacerbated the injury trying to do that.
Mm-hmm. And I don't understand why, if you practice medicine without a license, that's illegal. I think that's a felony. But faith healing is not. Why doesn't it?
Well, that's
because religion has special privilege all the time.
Religion does, and parental rights kind of works its way in there too, and it's horrible whenever there's someone who is so convinced of this that they do faith healing and praying for a sick kid, and then that kid dies. And
yep, dozens of kids a year killed by faith. Indeed.
Always tragic. Well, one of the other things that I wanted to talk to you about, particularly because you do have a bachelor's of science from ASU in anthropology, is since you spent so much time, we've been in the atheist, skeptic, humanist, whatever space for long enough that we've both seen and watched several different various legal cases play out, whether it's TST or FFRF or American Atheists, or they've all had their journeys into the legal realm one way or another. And that discussion of where that line between church and state is, and how where the line is between what scientists are wanting to do in terms of research, and where that ethical line is, where it does brush up against freedom of religion, is an interesting case in Arizona with the Havasupai tribe and their DNA test suit against Arizona State years ago, 2010, I think it was. But it is an interesting
I don't know anything
case
about this. Even though it is Arizona and Havasupai and everything, I don't know anything about this, and I'm guessing your audience likely doesn't either. So go ahead and fill me in.
Yeah. So there was a study done a long time ago where some ASU researchers, they went out to the Havasupai tribe, and they got releases to take blood samples to do a diabetes test study, because there is an endemic diabetes situation with the tribe, which has to do with lots of factors, but they wanted to test for DNA markers for being prone to diabetes. And they did that test, and it was actually helpful in some ways, because they did identify some markers and were able to say, okay, your family's prone to this, so maybe you should be a little more careful with your diet and whatever. But then later on, those same blood samples were used for additional DNA testing, which conclusively proved that the tribe originated by coming across the land bridge from Asia, which the tribe took religious exception to, because that doesn't line up with their creation myth. And so the question is, in the pursuit of knowledge, that kind of, the tribes were already distrustful of modern society to begin with. So it seems like it was a situation that really rubbed both parties the wrong way. And I think there's something to be said for sensitivity to marginalized religious communities when it comes to getting permissions to do the research, especially if you're using state funding.
So my question about that would be that I would think that the problem was that they signed for the diabetes study, but they did not give approval for the additional study. And is that the ethical thing?
That would be the ethical point. Okay. Yeah.
Gotcha. So that's what that was. So yeah, they've got grounds for that, which is a strange thing. It's strange for me when somebody has any, regardless whether they have grounds or not, when they complain that you provided proof against my fantasy, damn it, I wanted the fantasy. I don't care about the fact. So pay me damages for harshing my buzz.
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah. So then they're going to go on pretending when they know they are pretending, and probably already knew they were pretending. This is the problem I have with religious believers all the time. The reason that they don't care what the truth is, they just come out and admit. Very often people have admitted to me that they don't care what the truth is. They want to believe what they want to believe, regardless whether it's true or not. And they do not want to hear proof that it's not. So they pretend that I'm the one with the religious belief, and that they're the ones that have the proof against it. I only care what the truth is. I do much more than whatever I would rather believe. So give me that. If I'm wrong, show me where I'm wrong so that I won't be wrong anymore. But that doesn't happen, does it? You know, my interpretation of my favorite folklore, my magic book of fables, which is not supported by biblical scholars, implies this. No, it doesn't. And no, it isn't. And none of that shit matters anyway. And none of that was the truth.
Yeah, I saw it encapsulated really well. I can't remember, it's been too long, but on in the comment section on some Christian blog, I came across somebody who typed out the sentence, I don't want to believe what's right, I want to believe what's true. And I was baffled at how they could possibly, like, I don't know what confusion of ideas leads someone to think that something can both be correct and untrue.
If it's right, how can it be right and not true? How can it be true but not right?
Exactly. So, yeah, I suppose if you extrapolated, they could come up with something like, oh, well, we're just not talking about wanting to believe, what we think is true instead of popular consensus or. But basically, they just said, I want to believe what I think is right, whether no matter how much evidence there is to the contrary, which some people are just going to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm at a
So,
loss. And it bothers me when they make that admission. It's one thing when you don't know, because a lot of people believe what they do because everybody around them believes that, and then so they think there's some legitimacy to it, and they know and respect people with scholarship, and so they think that
they haven't been
these people
exposed
know so much
until.
about philosophy that I don't understand. There must be some truth to it. That's one thing. But when we're arguing about creationism, very quickly, I've said this many times, that very quickly when we have a discussion about creationism versus evolution, I will present data that's going to put you in a corner very soon, so that you have to decide, will I remain honest or will I remain creationist, because it is no longer possible to be both.
Right. So, given that we're going to change gears, and given your time because a lot of what you do, like we were both at SatanCon, and you were right out there on the street arguing with the preachers for 5 hours. I think you told me you were out
5
there.
straight hours, yes, 5 hours straight, and I didn't even realize that I had wasted so much time out there, just headbutting against absolute rampant madness.
It
Willful
was a
ignorance.
circus outside of that convention. It really was.
Indeed.
And that is something that you do fairly regularly when you're out at conventions or whatever. You will go out there
Yep.
and talk to the people on the street. And what have you learned from doing that?
That people will find a way to make believe one way or another. They're not always aware that they're doing it. There is a way to do that where you keep yourself like psychologically insulated, that you don't know that you're lying to yourself. But with young earth creationists and flat earthers, they know. They know they're full of shit.
I've always personally wanted to get the flat earthers to debate the hollow earthers. I
You
just
know
want
what
to
I
see
always
those
wanted to do?
two.
What I always wanted to do was this one guy, I think he's called Jeranism. He's one of those flat earth people, just totally repugnant. And his skill is being excessively irritating. So he's just rude. He's just rude until you lose your patience with him. He's a rude and childish idiot. But
And then
that's
he
his
claims
argument
victory.
style. Now, he argues for the flat earth. Now, I thought about put Jeranism against Kent Hovind. Kent Hovind uses the same style. He's just irritating. He's just grotesquely dishonest and super superior arrogant.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he also pretends that he was a science teacher. He pretends to be an expert in science. He clearly doesn't know anything at all about. Now, his deal is he's arguing for young earth creationism always. But he has said a few times that flat earth is just stupid and makes creationists look dumb. Which when Kent Hovind says that yeah, that's impressive. So I would love to see a debate between Kent Hovind and Jeranism, where Hovind has to defend the globe Earth. This would be the first time, and I know Kent Hovind always, because he's a malignant narcissist who can't concede failure, that he's lost every debate I've ever seen him in. He's got his ass handed to him and just refuses to admit it. But this would be one time that he could actually win. One time when he could use science to his advantage and actually win the debate. And I bet he would still lose.
I don't think he'd take the debate.
Even though he's right, he would still lose because his own tactic is being used against him by somebody even more extreme than he is.
That is a useful strategy, I think, throwing someone's own argument or own argumentation style back at them and seeing how they handle it. That does tend to rub people the wrong way, throw them off balance.
Yep.
So one other thing I wanted to talk, because I watched some of your recent stuff getting ready for this, and you had a conversation with a Mr. V, was it, about eternalism cosmology?
Yeah.
And I'm not. This has nothing to do with the conversation you were having in and of itself, but you did mention, not that you've seen anyone put the idea forward, but you were talking about Sagan's flatlander concept of three-dimensional beings passing through two-dimensional space and whatnot.
And then what would look like, I've seen MRI animations of this, so that if you were to walk through an MRI screen, if you visualize this, the MRI just does a cutaway view of you. And what happens when you're in this machine, of course, it does a cutaway view of your entire body this way. So let's ignore walking through it, just the way it normally operates. The first thing it touches is the top of your head. So the top of your head appears, it gets a little tiny cutaway view of the top of your head out of nothing, it seems. And then it goes on and covers the entire thing, your shoulders, your chest, and so on the way down. And then when it gets to the end of your feet, of course, you disappear into nothing. It's doing little teeny cutaway views of every millimeter of your body one at a time, all the way through. So you appear out of nothing, and then you disappear into nothing. So my thought was, what if the Big Bang, and no, I'm not saying that anybody supports this. This mathematician said that somebody made a similar argument, but I don't know that that's true. But I wondered, what if the Big Bang was a fourth spatial dimension flooding into three-dimensional space-time?
Yeah. Okay. So I have seen that. I've never seen it in a journal, but noted chaos magician Peter Carroll on his website has math papers about that. Talks about nth dimensional hypersphere cosmology is what he calls it. And it is the very same idea of it. Basically, he says time is an illusion and it's all this nth dimensional hypersphere passing through 3D space, and that's why we experience time the way we do, which is interesting. And I've run it by some mathematician friends of mine, and they didn't verify the math or anything, but they did validate that I understood the idea in the rough. So it's something to look at if you're keen on investigating that sort of thing.
Yeah, I like to talk about, one of the reasons that I don't like to talk about philosophy is because I like to be able to show a clear right or wrong. I like to be able to show, where the facts are and all of that, unambiguously. And you can't do that with philosophy. I mean, because people will inaccurately criticize me as being a logical positivist, apparently based on the notion that they think that I believe in, what is it, verificationism. But it's none of that is correct. That's just their interpretation that they're trying to staple onto me. And they will tell me the excuse, well, that went out of style in the 20th century. Okay, but you're still quoting Aquinas as if he trumps Hume.
Right.
So where's the logic there? So that's one of the reasons that I don't like to argue philosophy, because the argument is never ending. Well, this person says it's he said, she said that, and that's as good as it gets.
I think that's to some extent, especially if you believe, especially from what we understand about how observable before the Big Bang is, a lot of these things are not anything we're ever going to be able to prove one way or the other to begin with.
Yeah. And so I think that it's impressive what we have figured out about cosmology in the last 100 years, because that's what we're talking about. Like literally 100 years from knowing nothing about the Big Bang to now, 100 years almost exactly. But we don't know really anything yet. We know that the universe is evidently expanding. It's evidently accelerating its expansion. But do we really understand that? I've had the opportunity to speak directly to Lawrence Krauss and to Sean Carroll and to Victor Stenger, and I get slightly different interpretations. I like the way Sean Carroll and a couple of other cosmologists back in the day, around in the late 1990s or Y2K area, I spoke to a couple more, and they were very forthcoming when saying that we don't know. That the best information we have, the observations we've seen so far, the mathematics we have, according to the theorems and the type of physics that we're stuck with, all of this is what it looks like to be. Okay, granted. And then Sean Carroll says, but we won't really know until we have a quantum theory of gravity, which could change everything.
Right, because that's kind of, I mean, Newton came along and we said all these numbers seem to check out, and then we got better equipment and general relativity came around and we said, oh no, those numbers, they're good enough for within the solar system. And then
well, Newton's numbers were not good enough for the solar system because he couldn't account for Mercury.
No.
Yeah,
but that's part of that. That's part of why I think a lot of the M theory and string theory and even this hypersphere cosmology thing that I was talking about, that they all kind of fall prey into, well, the math works if we make some assumptions, which is all well and good if you're trying to come up with something, but you'll ultimately never know one way or the other, I don't think, unless we come up with something that I haven't seemed to figure out how we'd test for. But again, it's not my job.
Like I said, I'm impressed with how much they've learned so far, but and one of two things is implied by that. I know that like gravitational waves were identified in 2016, and there was a story I just saw today that they discovered ripples in space-time. So that's interesting. I think I might have seen that story a year or two before. It's being republicized now, and all of that's interesting, but we could be just as easily, I think, on the verge of something that overwrites everything. It takes it into a very new direction, not to invalidate the Big Bang, but to enhance our understanding of it. Like when in the 60s, it was commonly thought that the Big Bang was this sudden eruption of everything from nothing. Even though I think Stephen Hawking said something to that effect. And I know Victor Stenger said something to that effect also. But I don't know any atheist alive who believes that everything came from literal nothing. Whenever they're talking about nothing, they're talking about a quantum field fluctuation, whatever. They're talking about something. It's not an absolute philosophical nothing. It's not like there was nothing nowhere, and then there's suddenly a thing and it spreads out everywhere. So this is one of the reasons that I'm not interested in the subject, because I can't prove that anything we know about it is actually knowledge. I can't, because I'm not in the field. Now, physicists will tell me, Sean Carroll has been very confidently told me, oh, from this point to this point, this is absolutely what we know. Okay. As according to what you just said, according to the assumptions you've made, according to the physics that you're limited to, in general relativity, classical physics, this is what it is. And you already told me quantum field or a quantum theory of gravity could change everything. And that some of the assumptions that may seem valid and perfectly reasonable now might be wrong. This is not the same as with evolution. So the creationists criticize me all the time, saying that evolution depends on assumptions. Yeah, like what? What are these assumptions?
Right, that's when they automatically jump to the Big Bang, and you have to be like, no,
Sorry,
whoa,
Big
whoa,
Bang
you're
is not
skipping,
evolution.
you're skipping several billion years back in the conversation.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, this
So
has been
evolution is something we can demonstrate, we can measure, we can actually what's true and false about that, and so that's much safer ground for me to argue on when we talk about it. How the believers will say, well, why is you still have, why is the missing link still missing? And well, of course it isn't. It hasn't been for half a century. Where have you been? Well, there's no beneficial mutations. Yeah, we've got a long list of them. We can positively identify exactly what codon and what genome and whatever, and what type of mutation it was that produced whatever beneficial effect. Yes, we've got lists of these I can show you. I don't want to see what I don't want to believe.
right. We might not necessarily be able to, say what exact conditions led to that beneficial adaptation becoming dominant. There's all kinds of things going on there, but we know it happened.
Yep.
Yeah. So, as we move on to
and all
bigger
of
and
this
better,
is to deflect. All of this is to deflect from the fact that creationism is nothing but assumptions.
yeah. I
So
mean, you
they
may
want
as
to
well.
project. They want to project all
Well,
their own faults onto us.
The thing that's always bugged me about creation is when they get very, like the old shirt where it was the devil burying the dinosaur bones. It's like Teach the Controversy, that one.
Yep.
Where they just kind of explain away all the evidence by saying, well, God put that there to trick non-believers, and you immediately are stuck with, well, I may as well just say that the universe started on the day I was born, then, and everything before then was just put there. But anybody could make that argument, so it becomes very frustrating to argue with them.
I created the universe. I just forgot when and how I did it.
Yes, it is the year 44 Amy, and so what is
many people have told me that they want to believe what they want to believe, and they ask me ridiculous questions like, why does it have to be true before I believe it? Why can't I believe it even if it's not true? And that's a stunning question for me. Why would you want to believe something that is not true? But that's what faith is.
Mm-hmm.
Because when they find out that what they believe is true or not true, when they find out that the thing that they were told by their minister, none of it is true, they have to make that choice. Does the truth matter or does their faith matter? And very often they fall on the side of faith versus truth. I mean, when I say truth, I don't mean any old lie you want to believe, like what faith does. I mean, the truth is what the facts are, what we can show to be true. This is not philosophy. We can actually show conclusively what's true and what isn't.
So as someone who has spent so much time in the public having these arguments, for the average person out there, what would you say if someone comes up to them and starts proselytizing? What would you say if you had to say the one question that you would lob at them to get them off your back so you could just enjoy your meal or whatever? What is your number one tactic for the please just go away? I'm not in the mood for this today.
I would have to I tend to take the bait. I do. I don't, my wife will be the reason that I can't have this argument right now. Yeah. So, I mean, she doesn't want me to lob into this right now. I'm happy to go toe to toe, but my wife wants to do this other thing, and you're standing in my way being stupid.
So yes. So if you are prone to the argumentation like you are, have somebody there to check your instincts, I suppose.
Yeah, well, you saw what happened at SatanCon. I went
Yeah, left
outside
to your
for
own
what I thought would
devices.
be. I went outside for what I thought would be 5 minutes, turned into 5 hours.
Okay, so Aaron, where can people find all of your stuff? You have Patreon, right?
Yes, definitely. I have been doing since 2014. This has been my sole sustenance. So I need all the help I can get. I'm a full-time activist. There was a time when I was working in a corporate job. I had been for 14 years. And the last couple of years of that, they started closing out all of my ability to do anything. I was doing a lot of my channel stuff at work, because when I get off work and I get all the way, drive home from work, I now have what an hour or two before I have to, and that's family time,
Sure.
So it was when I got out of that job, I could finally do stuff again. I wasn't able to do anything for the last couple of years. So I'm very glad that I got on Patreon and I can do, and I'm super busy. I mean, other people that I know that are doing what I do, they have time to do movie night. They have time to go play tennis with their neighbors or whatever, or get caught up on video games. I don't. I have to make time if I want to watch a movie once a month,
You
and I
also
don't need to be
have
at the theater.
quite a lot of animals to care for. You got 2, 3 dogs, a handful of snakes.
I wouldn't say a handful.
How many snakes do you have now are in your care?
I got 5 dozen.
5 dozen. That is more than a handful for sure. But when you're locked into a collector binge, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, well, there's a little bit. My wife wants to get into snake breeding, so I've been getting. I have a few pets out of that, but she's the one with the breeding projects, and she's very excited because we're going to the North American Reptile Breeders Conference tomorrow and Saturday, and so she's very excited about that. There's a whole bunch of different breeders for all kinds of stuff, and she's
That sounds like great fun.
yeah. But we already got 60 snakes.
You can't bring no, you can't, you're not allowed to say that followed you.
She's got some nice ones, and they are breeding projects, and it should start. We've been buying babies because they're cheaper. And so we haven't been able to start breeding right away. We have a couple of breeding pairs that will start in the next couple of months. She's going to put them together in the next couple of months, because some of them you can breed in the fall. The African ones you can breed in the fall, and then we've got a number of others that are just going to start in the spring. But I only have to take care of 8 out of the 60.
Well, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's
She
still
only
a lot
makes
of
me
feeding
take care of the
and
food for my 8.
oh, okay. Well, Aaron, is there any parting words? I'll give you the last.
I will be in Houston for the Houston Oasis on October 1st. I'm going to be giving a speech there on the evolution of whales.
Excellent, fun stuff. Those hip bones.
Yep.
All right. Well, Aaron,
So
thank you so much.
patreon.com/ARONRA. I do need all the help I can get. Oh, you can also become a member on my channel, which is ARONRA at YouTube.
Yeah, both of those things. Do check them out. Aaron's really fun to watch. Aaron, thanks for coming on. It's always good to talk to you.
My pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.